Welcome, everybody. This is the first demo for the Performance Reports Enhancements. And today we're going to be going over the functionality that we've developed so far. We've got 5 functional requirements that we'll be touching on. I'm conducting this demo from the Wave QA environment. So I'll be using a bunch of test users and test data to run through this. You will see some ARCC employee names for some of the records, but there is no ARCC employee data or PR related information in any of the forms. All of the data that's in any of the forms that we'll be working with today is all stuff that I've filled in. So right now on the screen, I've got the meeting invite and the agenda for today. So the requirements that we're specifically going to touch on are the email address that the notifications come from. We're changing that to a do not reply address so that people who do try to reply to the messages don't accidentally send confidential data to an email box that isn't supposed to receive it. Number 2 is an updated view for supervisors and managers and DHROs so that they can see the status of a PR no matter who is currently working on it, as opposed to the current view, which only allows them to see PRs that are in their own queue that they need to be working on. Number 3 allows admin services users to reroute PRs to previous workflow steps. This is a troubleshooting method so that you folks can hopefully take a bigger role in fixing some of the smaller issues that come up when users are interacting with the system. Number 4 is an update to the appeal workflow so that appealed PRs are not automatically finished so that the admin services folks have a chance to review those appeals to make sure that the appeal was intentional before a PR is finalized. And number 5, and we're just looking at part of this one today, number 5 relates to incorporating new versions of the DHR 34 and DHR 12 forms into the system. So these are templates that were updated after the application went live originally. And although there weren't too many changes on the surface, I think one or two fields were removed and a bunch moved around. Under the hood, the 2 templates were very different. So we'll kind of go through those and show that the new template works. Are there any questions before we get started?
No questions for me.
No. I'm not going to necessarily be able to go through the requirements in any particular order, but I will make sure that it's clear what we're looking at as we're discussing the functionality on the screen to help relate them back to the functional requirements here.
Tim, this is Rena. I can't see what you're showing on the screen. What am I missing something on my computer?
Is it too small or is it just a blank screen?
I don't see anything.
I can see you. Ideally, you would be able to see a Paint, MS Paint right now. There's a hierarchy that he's showing.
Okay, let's switch to this. Can you see that now, Rena?
Nope.
Gabby or Jeanette,
Rena,
are you able to see this?
I can see it. So Rena, you might have to log out of the meeting and back in. Sometimes there's like a little glitch. I don't know. Or Gabby, if you have an idea of what needs to be done. So Rena can see the screen.
Sometimes if you see Teams, you may have two Teams open. You probably are in the wrong one because you open Teams and when you open the meeting, it opens another Teams. So try to see in which one of those 2 are you are I mean, your screen is pointing to.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
exactly what Gabby's talking
Yeah.
about. You end up with 2 instances.
Exactly. So you have 2 instances of team in the bottom. So you just hover over the team's icon, and then you're going to see 2 items. So you got to click on the one that says ARCC InSite PR Enhancements.
You know what? Let me do what you said first. Get out of here and then start
Okay.
all over. I think I'll join from Tim's email.
Oh,
Great.
okay.
Okay. We'll wait for you.
We'll wait for you, Rina. Don't worry about it. But if you still have problems, let me know what you see. We're just going to wait for Rina, Tim, of course.
Yes, that's fine.
Looks like we may have you back.
I got it. Did you really send this to me at midnight?
Yes.
Silly. Okay.
Okay.
That's dedication.
No kidding. All right. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Okay. Yeah, we'll go over a couple of the handouts that I sent out just quickly here. The first one here, again, both of these were emailed out yesterday. So if you have those handy and can bring them up on another screen, another monitor while we're going through, I think that might help explain some of the things that you're looking at. But just quickly, the first one here is a diagram of a normal PR workflow. And this will be helpful when we're talking about routing PRs to different stages. You might hear me refer to the different milestones or the different statuses up here in the blue. But when we get into talking about PRs that are signed too early, ones that don't follow the normal steps, this will be helpful. We can point to a PR that started here and jumped all the way up here by mistake and how we fix that. The other item is a org chart. This is how I have the users set up in my QA environment. And I'm going to be jumping back and forth a lot between user 1, user 2, and user 3. User 3 is the employee. They're the one who the PR is belongs to. User 2 is the supervisor. So they'll be the one filling out the contents of the PR, rating the employee. And then user 1 is the manager. So as I'm jumping back and forth between the different windows to simulate those different roles, I'll point out which user I'm currently, or which user's dashboard I'm currently looking at. And you can refer back to the org chart here to just kind of double check that what you're seeing fits in with what you would expect for that particular role. All right, so with that, let's begin. All right, so right now I am logged in and I am the user 2, so I'm logged in as the supervisor. And what you're seeing here is the normal or the view that a supervisor would be used to kind of from the middle section of the current PR application. So what we did for part of this was we put the two sections onto tabs up top to give us more real estate here. And so the review appraisals tab is the middle section for you guys, and it would be the top section for managers and supervisors. And this initial view has all of the same functionality that they currently have. It shows the PRs that are in their queue. It's got the comment section over here, and it's got the buttons which allow them to act on a PR. And I'll go into the enhancements to this view a little bit later on in the demo here. But for now, we're looking at a PR that's in the supervisor status, and I'm logged in as user 2, who's the supervisor. So I have the ability to edit the form here, just like people are used to. And zoom in. So this is the new version of the DHR 34. You'll notice that some of the fields have moved around a little bit. The job code has moved. Down here, there's no more date fields. And the version of the form is from October of 2017. So this is the most recent version of the form that we've been provided with. From a functionality standpoint, it behaves the same way. As a supervisor, I come in and check all the boxes here, fill out the PR for the employee, add some comments, and provide an overall rating. And from time to time, unintentionally, the supervisor might come down and sign the form before they're supposed to. So once I sign and insert my title here, and this is, as I understand it, one of the most common issues that is encountered right now. It seems like the one that I get the most calls about. So now, since the supervisor has signed it, after I route it to the manager, we've just had a big jump here in functionality. So the PR went through the admin services steps first. The supervisor filled it out. And even though they're not supposed to sign it, they did sign it. And so that jumped us all the way up here to this step, bypassing milestone 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So in the past, this is where you folks have had to give me a call so that I can route the form back to this stage for you so the manager can remove their signature. But that is no longer necessary. So now I'm logged in as myself. I'm an admin user, so somebody in the admin services group. And I'm looking at the batch, which includes the PR that was just signed accidentally. So it's number 102 here as we're going through. So you can see now that it's at the manager status. And so we'll take a look. If I go in and I look at this PR as the manager, I can tell that something's wrong with it because my only option is to route it to admin services. It doesn't give me the option to route it to the DHRO for their review. So in order to fix it, the admin services panel has a new button over here called Route. And if you click on that, it will pop up the interface that allows you to choose where you want to route a PR back to. This button is only on the admin tab, so it's only available to admin services folks. If we look back here at the managers screen, you'll notice that they've only got the 2 tabs up top. They don't have the admin tab or the maintenance tab, similar to the way the top section of the phase 1 application was shown or hidden, depending on whether the logged in user was in admin services. So once I click on the button here, and click the drop down to select which or where to route a PR back to, the application remembers what steps a PR has gone through, or it can figure that out based on some of the routing metadata for the PR. And in this case, it knows that the PR jumped from the first milestone where the supervisor is rating the PR all the way to where it is now. So it's smart enough to only give you that one option where to route the PR back to. It doesn't allow you to route a PR any further back than the supervisor here. So it can never go back all the way to admin services, which could potentially result in data loss. This is as far as it can go back. It also forces you to add comments. So if I don't add any comments as to why I'm manually rerouting the PR, it won't let me proceed. But if I do add a comment here, I get a confirmation box making sure that this is something that I really want to do. And then the PR is rerouted. So the status is updated from manager to supervisor, and we get audit history over here. We've got a record highlighting the transfer, and we also have the note that I entered when I routed the form. You'll also notice that the route button is grayed out now because the PR is back in the very first milestone. It can't go back any further. So the route button is grayed out. So if we switch back, right now I'm looking at the manager's screen. So the PR was with the manager initially. It has now been rerouted. So if we refresh the view, the PR is not there anymore. But if we switch to the supervisor's dashboard, the PR is now back in the supervisor's dashboard. The supervisor has the ability to edit the form. You'll notice here all the fields are locked because there's a signature. But if the supervisor clears their signature, all the forms or all the fields unlock again, and the PR is back to the way it should be in that first milestone. So at that point, the supervisor can save it and route it to the manager again, like normal. So in this case, since there's no signature on the PR, when the supervisor routed it, it took the normal route. And now we're right here in milestone 2 in the manager step. And we can confirm that by looking at the manager's dashboard. And now the manager has the normal options for a PR that's in the review stage. They can route it back to the supervisor, or they can route it to the DHRO.
I like it.
Good. Any questions so far? We'll go over a few more rerouting scenarios here as we go as well. So you'll see this again, but any initial thoughts or questions before we move on?
No, I like it, but
I
then
think it's
also,
great.
yeah, I like it too. And also, I absolutely love the tabs, the my appraisals and then review appraisals.
Excellent.
But that's just me.
No, I agree with Jeanette.
And it
Good.
looks like we have Fontif join, so she also wants to provide some feedback. No pressure, Fontif.
Oh, I'm glad Pontiff is on.
No, I also like the tabs because I know there's a few people who forget to scroll down. So they don't see the other dashboards. So that's great. It's visible. It's more easy to find now.
Good.
Mhm.
All right, let's see. Okay, so I'm going to push this PR forward a little bit. This is the DHRO, so we'll route it on to the supervisor. Both the manager and the DHRO took a look. They were happy with what they saw in the PR. And let's see, so now we're back at the supervisor. Okay, and this probably would never happen, but in this case, we're right here. The supervisor has had everybody review it, and the next normal step would be to route it to the employee. But instead, we're going to look at what happens again if they were to sign it too early. So they did not learn their lesson the first time around and are signing it again. And so if we route it to the manager, again and again, we'll look at the route options here from the manager's standpoint. And again, it was signed too early, so when it gets to the manager, the only option is for admin services. So the PR was here that the supervisor signed it before they should have, and again, we jumped up to this state right here. So when we look at that PR from the admin point of view, you see it's in the manager state, and when we choose to reroute it again, this time, because the PR has moved through a bunch of extra steps before it was signed too early, there are now multiple options for where it can be rerouted to. At this stage, it does require you to kind of think about what you're doing. And what I mean by that is that the goal for fixing this is to get it back to the supervisor so that they can remove their signature. You know, routing it backward to the DHRO or routing it backward to the manager, although it would be possible, it probably wouldn't help the situation a whole lot. So in general, a lot of times, selecting the top item from the list, which will be the most recent stage or most recent status that a PR has gone through, that's usually going to be the one that you want to select. So in this case, it is because I want to send it back to the supervisor so that they can remove their signature. And the status has been changed. It's now in the supervisor's queue. So I will switch back to user 2, who is the supervisor. Take a look, and the form is back here and all ready for me to fix. So I can go in again. Once it stops spinning, I can remove my signature. And that will allow me to fix the document myself, and now I can route it on as normal to the employee. Yep. Okay, there was one step that I skipped there. Okay, so I'm going to sign it too early again as the supervisor. And I want to show you the workflow if there are 2 signatures attached. Okay, so the supervisor signed it too early. They sent it to the manager. The manager maybe isn't really paying close attention, or they are paying close attention, but they think that maybe the employee forwarded the PR without signing it on purpose. And so the manager comes in and signs. And so what happened here is the PR was in the supervisor review state before the supervisor sent it to the employee. The supervisor signed it, which jumped the PR up to milestone 7 here. And the manager signed it, sending it to you folks in the completed state. So if we take a look at that in your, oh, I haven't routed it. There we go. So route it to admin services. So now this is a PR that's completed. This is one where you folks would go in and take a look at the PR as part of your normal process, and you would notice that the employee's signature is missing, and probably follow up and find out that that was not intentional and that its PR skipped the employee step. So you want to reroute it backwards to fix it. And you'll notice that the only option here is to send it back to the manager. So even though the PR has been through multiple steps already, it's gone through 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7. The only place that the application is allowing you to send it back to is the manager step, because the manager has to remove their signature first. If we send it back to any of these other steps here, aside from maybe step 2 here, nobody would be able to do anything with the PR because the DHRO can't remove the manager's signature and the supervisor can't remove the manager's signature. So the PR has to go back through steps kind of in order for each of these people who signed at the wrong time to remove their own signature. So the first step is to send it back to the manager. So we'll do that first. And I am now logged in as user 1, who is the manager. So if I refresh my dashboard, here's the form. I can go in and remove my signature. Like so. And once the manager's signature is removed, the manager can let you know that they've finished their piece. And then you can route the PR back a little bit further. In this case, the next step is to have the supervisor remove their signature like we saw before. So you could route it to the supervisor so that they could do that. So I will switch my dashboard here to user 2, who's the supervisor. And I can edit the form and remove the signature. While I am taking that action, are there any questions about the routing options or the routing order when there are signatures involved with a PR?
None for me.
Okay.
No questions.
One way to think about it is that when there are signatures on the form, you can only route it back as far as the person who signed. So, for example, once the employee signs, you will not have the option to route to any of these steps back here because we don't want anybody to be able to make updates to the contents of the form until since the employee has already signed it. You'd have to route it back to the employee first to have them remove their signature. Then it could go back into the editing phase to make changes. That way, there's no possibility of there being data in the form that the employee hasn't had a chance to review before signing.
That's good. I think it's also really helpful going through these use cases to show how the comment history works. I think requiring that field is very important to assuring that they're not going to end up with the same document back in their queue and then hopefully just reprocess it again. That comment history is front and center, so hopefully it's a good visual cue of what action needs to be taken.
I do have a question for you folks. Right now, the edit form button is the one that allows an admin services user to open up a PR and look at the contents. Right now, that's only available or only active at the very beginning stage when you are looking at the employee-related information, the person-related information at the top of the PR, and possibly updating that. And it's also available to you at the very end for a completed PR so that you can review the information and potentially make any updates to PeopleSoft that you need to. With the understanding that you will be routing PRs backwards from time to time, and it may be helpful to be able to open up the PR and take a look at what signatures are on the PR or what signatures are not on the PR. Would it make sense to have the edit form button be available to you all the time so that you could open up the PR and take a look at what's actually in there?
I'll let Fontib answer that one.
I think it'll be helpful for me, just
Okay.
so I can review the whole form to see if they're missing anything else, and kind of advise them.
Okay.
So.
That would be my assumption as well. It seems to me like you would kind of need to be able to open up the form and take a look at it to know where you wanted to route it back to. In some cases, the comment history will certainly probably get you 85% of the way there, but I assume it would be helpful to see that. The fields in the form will be locked or unlocked depending on the signatures that are present. So you will not necessarily be able to edit any of the fields in the PR most of the times when you open it.
Is that the case?
Just because you have the edit form doesn't mean that you can actually edit the contents. It just means that you can open the PR.
So my only question on that one is that in some cases we have employees who need to have their probation extended and their PRs have already been sent out, but and maybe they've been completed a little bit by the supervisor, but I don't foresee that it would actually have been sent to anybody for review at that point, but it still wouldn't be in admin services anymore. And so because of that, if we have to update the rating period end date because their probation has been extended, we can still do that though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
This doesn't change anything that you can, any way that you interact with the form when it's in that first stage here. And it actually would allow you to make changes to the PR in any of these first 4 steps as well.
Beautiful.
So
Okay,
as
great.
long as nobody has signed the PR, even if it were, with the DHRO, FONTIP could log in and edit the PR and add that or make that change. The comment history item that would be added, let's see. I think the rating period end date is one that is specifically tracked. So I think that sort of change would get explicitly defined here in the comment history as well.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yep. All right. That is the bulk of the demonstration for the rerouting piece. We'll touch on it again a little bit in relation to an appealed document. But before we move on to that, any questions specifically about rerouting?
No questions for me.
Okay. Let's see, we don't actually, let me forward it on one more step and then I'll come back. Okay, are the different items here clear to you in terms of where you're sending the PR?
Yes.
So we can only send it back to the last person who signed it. And so that would be at the very top, right? Or no?
Yes. The most recent person to work on the PR is the one at the top.
Okay, great.
So supervisor rate is at the very beginning. That's when the supervisor is filling out the form. Then it goes to the manager for their review. Then it goes to the DHR for their review. And then it goes back to the supervisor for their review. If you have another name for any of these pieces, something that kind of fits better with your jargon, let me know and we can update that.
Okay, thank you.
It looks good, Tim.
Thank you. All right, let's talk about appeals. So I just forwarded the PR to the employee. And you'll notice now I'm logged in as user 3, who's the employee. This particular user doesn't manage anybody, so the only tab they have is the My Appraisals tab. They don't have access to any of the views that would allow them to route or comment on their PR or somebody else's. All of the buttons here work the same as what they have in the past. They can send a PR back. They can forward it on without signing it if they choose to. They're prompted to do that before they can take that option. And they can also open the form up and sign it. So again, kind of as we're going through here, remembering that this is the new version of the form, we're also just kind of looking to make sure that the functionality that you're used to carries over to this new version. And so one of those things is at this state, now that the PR has been sent to the employee, all of the fields here are locked. And the employee has the choice of signing the normal box or the appeal box. So in this case, the employee will appeal. You get the pop-up, are you sure you want to appeal? I'll click yes and then sign. And once I've signed, I'll save the PR. And so once this is saved, the next step is for the employee to route that PR. And if you remember in the workflow, the way the application is currently deployed, once the employee clicks submit, the PR is immediately finalized. It doesn't go to you folks for your review. It just ends. It sends out some emails to let you know what happened, but it doesn't allow you to interact with that form anymore. But the way it works now is once the employee clicks submit, the PR is routed and it goes to a new status called appeal. It still sends the same emails, sends an email to the supervisor and the DHRO to let them know. And actually, I think that was the email right there. So this is the email that the DHRO and the supervisor would get. It looks the same as before. It's got the name of the employee and their employee ID, and tells you that the user has appealed their PR, and it attaches the appealed PR to the email. So as I said, right now, this is going out to the supervisor and the DHRO. Is the employee also supposed to get a copy at this point?
Yes, oh, actually, let me see. I think the employee does get a copy so that they're notified.
Okay, that's not the way it is. That's not the way the application behaves right now, but that's the way I have all of my all of the documentation that I've done for this project, this round of enhancements, says that the employee is supposed to get a copy. So I think I assumed that's the way it worked and didn't go back and double check.
I didn't realize that it wasn't that wasn't the case. So thank you for bringing that up.
Okay.
Ideally, if it's possible for the employee to also get a copy of it so they can see the PR that they are appealing.
Okay, so it should go to the employee, the supervisor, and the DHRO.
Yes, correct.
Okay, I will take a look at that.
Thank you.
Okay, so, oh, and the one other thing I wanted to show you with that, this is my inbox. This is the one that just came in right now, 9:52. And you'll notice that the reply address is coming from do not reply at sdcounty.ca.gov. So if the supervisor were to open this up and reply to this email, the reply would go to do not reply. Basically, it would go off into the void, as opposed to going to the ARCC mailbox that Michelle Smith monitors. I think in the past you've said that occasionally PRs are routed to that mailbox when somebody replies without really paying attention to who they're replying to. So after this update, these emails will not go to anybody. Obviously, unless somebody changes the address there, they could delete it and type in whoever they wanted and send it to the place where it's supposed to go. All right, so the employee has signed the appeal box. They have routed the PR on. The emails have gone out. And so here in the admin tab and admin services, employee can come in and see that the status of this PR is appeal. At this point, they can open the form. And once somebody opens the form, they can take a look. They can see that the signature is in the appeal box. This employee got a outstanding rating, so you might wonder why they're appealing this, and this might be one that was appealed accidentally. So at this point, you could follow up with the user or the supervisor or both and get a feeling for what's going on and decide what you need to do with this PR. If all of the fields are locked, so there's no chance that you could accidentally make any changes to the PR while you're looking at it here. So if the PR was appealed on purpose, then you have the option of finalizing it, just like you would normally. And so this will end the workflow for this PR so that it can be finished off through the appeals process. If that's not the case, though, and the appeal box was signed by accident, you can use the same routing or rerouting functionality here to send it back to the employee so that they can fix the PR. So the last step that the PR went through was the employee sign. And you'll also notice that's the only choice. And again, that's the only choice because we don't want to send it back to any of the stages where edits to the PR could be made. We want to send it back to the employee first so that they can fix the issue. And then after that, once the PR is fixed, then it can be routed normally back to any of the other steps where it could legitimately go. So I'll send this back to the employee. We've got our comment history there, recording our action, and the PR is now back in the employee state. And so if we come back and I'm now logged in as user 3, who's the employee, and if I refresh, the PR is now back in my queue. Since when it gets back to this queue, the contents of the PR are not changed at all. So the signature is still on the appeal box. And so since the signature is still there, the request additional edits is not available because the employee isn't allowed to send it back to the supervisor while the signature is on it. But they can come in and edit the form. And they can edit the form and remove their appeal. All right, so this is one thing that we still have to fix. Removing the signature from the appeal field right now unlocks all of these fields. We're working on fixing that. Those should stay locked even though the employee removes their signature. What should happen though is that the normal signature field should unlock once the appeal is removed. So we'll have that taken care of before UAT. So what I have to do today is save a copy first, and then go back in, edit the form again, and sign the correct signature field. You'll notice that since I have now removed my signatures, I could send it back for edits if I want to. But what I want to do is sign the box that I meant to sign the first time around, which is the regular signature box. And save the PR again. And once this saves and once I route the PR again, then the PR will no longer be on the appeal track. It'll be headed towards the supervisor. So if we take a look at the user 2, the supervisor's queue, you now see that the PR is ready for the supervisor to sign. So we went from the employee signing the appeal box, went to admin services for their review. It was determined that the employee signed the wrong box. So you sent it back to the employee. The employee took another stab at it, signed the correct box, and now we're over here in the supervisor queue following the standard workflow for this PR. So the supervisor can open up the PR and we'll see that the signature is in the normal employee signature box. All of the fields are locked so that no changes can be made since there's an employee signature on it, and the signature box is all ready for the supervisor. Any questions about what you see here or the appeal workflow as it's been updated?
No, no questions.
Okay.
No, I'm good.
Okay. You know, the couple takeaways probably are that the rerouting of a PR that was appealed by accident is the same process as rerouting any other form that went to the wrong spot. You use the same interface for that as you do for rerouting a form that the supervisor signed too early. And the other part of it is that we are adding one extra step in the appeal workflow so that admin services can have a chance to review the appealed PR before deciding whether it should be finalized or not. All right. Okay, so just touching back once again on the version of the form that we're looking at here. Everything that we've looked at so far has been with the new copy of the DHR 34, the 1017 one. All of the functionality that I have demonstrated works exactly the same for the old version of the form as well, the April 2017 version. So it's my assumption that when we deploy this, there are still going to be PRs in the system in process that are using the old version of the form. And so we're testing to make sure that existing forms are not negatively impacted by any of the changes that we're making here. So the old forms will continue to function the way they always have, and they will function normally right up until they are completed and exported to AX and removed from the system. And all of the new PRs that you create by importing new transmittal reports will use the new version of the form as they are created. The only differences will be that we won't be able to make any changes to the functionality of the form itself for the old version of the form. So I pointed out earlier where removing the signature unlocked a bunch of form fields. That is also a problem with the existing PR. We won't be able to fix that because we won't be able to because those PRs are already in process, and so we won't be able to kind of swap out the template for anything that's already in process. But as soon as those PRs are completed, make their way through the workflow, no more of the old template will be going in, and eventually everything in the system will be using the new versions of the DHR 34 and the DHR 12.
Tim, one question on that. Those older forms, will those still be routed through that new process step to DHRO for final
Yes.
review? Okay.
Yes, all of the new appeal workflow and all of the backwards routing capabilities will apply in the exact same way to all of the forms in the system, old and new versions, DHR 34 and DHR 12, and DHR 48 once we've got that in there as well.
Great. Thank you.
All right, so the last thing that I want to focus on for today is the new view for reviewers. So right now I am logged in as myself. I'm an admin user, but I also am a manager and a supervisor. So looking back at the org chart here for my QA environment, user 3 is the employee, user 2 is the supervisor, user 1 is the manager, and I'm the upper level manager above all of them. And if you'll notice here at the top, Patrick Dennis is the one at the very top of the hierarchy. So this is the view that we've been looking at so far. And this is the view that a supervisor or a manager is used to seeing. It shows the PRs that are in that person's queue and the ones that they can work on right now. So this PR is in the manager, it has the status of manager. I'm the manager. So it's showing up in my view here, and all of the action buttons are available to me because it's one that I'm supposed to work on right now. So this is the default view. This is what people will see when they first come in to the review appraisals tab. The new piece is the checkbox right here that says only show my work. So right now that is checked, and so it's only showing me the PRs that I can work on. If I uncheck that box, now the system will show me all of the PRs that I can work on, this one here, plus all of the PRs that are of interest to me that are in somebody else's queue that somebody else needs to be taking action on. So those are the rest of the items here. The way that this view is built is that it shows the PRs for the employees who report to me directly or indirectly. So here, this PR for user 2. User 2 reports to user 1, who reports to me. So that's one of the reasons that one's showing up. And then this view also shows PRs that I play a part in. So I will be taking the role of the supervisor for Sheila's PR and also for Vincent's. And I will be taking on the role of the manager for Kim's PR. I don't necessarily manage these people according to the org chart, but because I will be, because I've been assigned to play a role in this particular PR's workflow, it shows up here so that I can keep track of the status of it. So this one right here would be an example of maybe one where you need to reassign, where an admin services needs to assign a new manager to a form because the normal manager is on leave or something like that. And that's why this particular one shows up. The search functionality works the way you folks are used to it working. So I can start to type in, and it starts to filter. So now we've got DA for David and DA for Deanda, and I can keep going and it will filter down. So this would allow me to kind of weed through the list because for users who are very high up in the organization, when they come to this view, they have the ability to see the status of a lot of PRs. You know, somebody at the top of the recorder org chart, for example, could see 100 or so items if there were that many active PRs in the system. Any questions yet about what you're seeing? We'll just go through and show a bit more of how this works, but any initial questions?
No questions, but I love it. I love the checkbox because I think that's very helpful, especially because the managers are going to be able to view so many, right? And so they'll have the option to sort those out pretty quickly.
Yes.
And of course, the search one is pretty great too. So thank you so much. Everything looks great.
Good. And then I didn't specifically call it out, but you'll notice that all of the ones that are not in my queue, I don't have the ability to edit or route those PRs. All I can do is add a comment. So I could still add a comment asking the manager or the admin services, why hasn't this moved or something like that, but I can't actually take any action on those PRs. One question I did have for you folks, should PRs that are in the status of excluded show up for managers and supervisors? So if you, oops, that's not the screen I wanted. If you come in here and you exclude a PR for one reason or another, should that PR continue to be visible to supervisors and managers?
No, I would vote for
I
no.
don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. You know, Tim, this is the one area that most of the managers or chiefs have been asking about. So I'm excited that they'll be leaving us alone for a while.
Okay, excluded PRs should not show up. Okay, so let's go through kind of a use case here. So you'll notice that I've got user 2, Sheila, Vincent, and Kim here. Right now, I don't have a PR. I can't see a PR for user 4. And this is the PR right here that I'm talking about. User 4, our engineer, reports to Carlos, who reports to Frank. And so if we look at our org chart here, he's right down here, reporting to Carlos, reporting to Frank, reporting to Patrick. I'm not in this person's org chart hierarchy at all. And I'm not assigned to any of the supervisor or manager roles, so I don't see that PR at the moment. But if I come in, maybe I for some reason, maybe Carlos is on leave and I need to fill in as the supervisor. Now in the status here, I'm now the supervisor filling this role temporarily. If I come back and refresh my grid, I can now see this PR as it's going through the process because I'm the supervisor. So as you make changes manually to any of the roles here, the PRs that show up will be updated. This view is dynamic enough to do that. And as the PeopleSoft org chart changes, this view will update as well, because SharePoint gets the feed from PeopleSoft.
Tim, can you open that dialog again really quick, the route to?
Yep.
Or I'm sorry, the update record, excuse me, thank you. Is there anything in here we need to dig into? It seems pretty straightforward, actually, looking at it closer.
Yes, this is functionality from phase 1, and nothing here has changed in terms of the way it works in phase 2. The one difference is that you'll see some additional form types here. DHR, once we deploy this live, DHR 34 will be the newer version of the DHR form, and the old one will be labeled similar to this with the 2017-04 for April. I don't expect that you will ever need to, or that you will ever want to change a PR from using the new version of the DHR 34 to using the old version. You know, so maybe you would want to switch back and forth if transmittal report is read incorrectly or something. But these two items are there mostly just so that the old forms continue to work in the system. Other than that, the ability to update the supervisor, manager, DHRO, and division chief work in the same manner as they did in phase 1. All right, and any other questions? That is all that I had to show you today. We've got another 2 or 3 minutes so we can go back and take a look at anything that you have questions on before we spend a few minutes talking about what comes next.
No questions.
No, I think it's pretty thorough. Thank you.
Yeah, no question.
Excellent.
Great job.
Excellent. Thank you.
Good job, Tim.
Okay.
And David.
With yes, indeed. With
Yes,
that, I'm
everybody
going
involved.
to.
Thank you.
With
don't
that,
need
I'm
the
going to
credit.
stop the
It's all these
recording,
guys.
and we can spend a few minutes chatting about what comes next.